This is Steve Ridgel, and I want to talk a little bit today about what I've learned from watching my grandkids play in state tournament in athletics. Now, I've got five grandkids, and I've had one that went to state with her school team in volleyball and softball. I've had one that, as a little league all star, went to state. I've had one that, as a gymnast, went to several state tournaments. And then I've had one that with his school went to the baseball state tournament. Now the fifth one hadn't gone yet, but he's a freshman in high school, and we tell him he's got a lot of pressure to live up to the other ones. But I suspect if not his football team, he'll go in track either in the sprints or as a pole vaulter before he's graduated. But let me tell you some things I've learned, and I think they're great lessons for my grandkids. But just as I've watched all this, and here's some of the things that they have learned from that. Success is great, but you can't always control everything. Some of them I knew would go because they were really, really good, and it would have been a shock for them not to get to the state tournament. A few of them have been on teams where I was surprised they even got to regionals, much less one all the way through to state. I've seen them excel where they did. I've seen some of my grands play better at the state tournament than they did all year, and some not as well. And some just really came through, and some didn't. Some got really disappointed. Some were exhilarated. It just their emotions were all over the map with things. And you know what? That's kind of like life is sometimes. Sometimes, boy, life just comes out so well, and it's better than you ever dreamed, and it's great. And sometimes life's hard. It doesn't turn out like you wanted to, and it's crushing. Those are great life lessons they learned in sports. Some other things they learned from these state tournament things. You really don't control your own destiny. Everybody thinks you do, but you really don't. Your team gets to the state and a star player gets hurt. Or the opponent loses a star player and you beat somebody you shouldn't have beaten because something happened. Sometimes you have bad calls. It's been really interesting to watch all of them in the tournament. Sometimes they had calls I thought were bad against them. Sometimes they had calls that, truthfully, I thought were bad against the other team. And you don't control that. You have to learn to adapt to that. And that's how life is. You always think, no, life's going to be fair. All the calls are going to be even, and they're not. Partly because umpires and referees and officials, they're just human. And so they're not always consistent. Sometimes they just blow the call. It happens. Sometimes players boot the ground ball. Sometimes coaches sub in the wrong player in the basketball game at the wrong time. Everybody makes mistakes, including officials. So it's good to learn sometimes. You don't control everything in life, and you sure learn teamwork. One of the proudest things I've seen about all my grandkids is when they lost, none of my grands have ever pointed the finger at a teammate and said, well, we'd have won if not for. Boy, and that's a great lesson in life. You got to work together. In fact, we're all believers and Christians, and so that's our family tradition. And that's one of the great things you learn about church. It takes all of us. We're all in this together. Now, the only one of my grandkids that won a state championship, interesting enough, is the one that participated in an individual sport, gymnastics. She won several state championships, but it was interesting because she could control a whole lot more, but she didn't learn the same about teamwork as the other ones did, having to depend on someone else. So I've watched athletics for a while. I played, my kids played, my grands all played. We've watched sports for a long time. And I enjoy it, and I live or die with the victories and the defeats and all the appropriate things. But what I'm most proud of is the kind of character that I see demonstrated and built in my kids because of sports. And I think that's a great lesson. So I'm going to tell you, if your kids can play sports, let them. If they get to a state tournament, wow, be excited. If they ever win one, be double excited. So this is Steve Ridgel being thankful for what I've learned and my grands have learned from playing sports at a high level.